A white catamaran was found drifting 88 nautical miles off the northeastern coast of Australia on April 20th, 2007. Like the famous story of the Mary Celeste, the crew of the KAZ II had mysteriously vanished without a trace, starting an enduring mystery known as the ghost ship of Australia. Search and rescue found the boat eerie on entering it. An inquest blamed misadventure and bad luck by the crew, but what really happened is a question that will never fully be answered, as 13 years on, the crew's bodies remain missing in the Coral Sea. The first indication that there was a problem came on Wednesday, April 18, 2007, when a helicopter reported spotting KAZ II adrift in the vicinity of the Great Barrier Reef. On April 20th, maritime authorities caught up with the boat and boarded it. Strangely, no one was on board the vessel. John Hall, Queensland's Emergency Management Office, QEMO, said, quote, "What they found was a bit strange in that everything was normal. There was just no sign of the crew," end quote. The QEMO revealed that the boat was in serviceable condition and was laid out as if the crew were still on board. Food and cutlery were set on the table, and the laptop computer was set up and turned on, and the engine was still running. Officials also confirmed that the boat's emergency systems, including its radio and GPS, were fully functional, and that it still had its full complement of life jackets. There was also a small boat still hoisted on the stern of the boat, and the anchor was up. The only signs that were out of the ordinary, other than the disappearance of the crew, was that the mainsail had been badly shredded and that there was no life raft on board. It is unknown whether there ever was one. Rescue officer Corey Benson said that he found an eerie scene when he was winched down from the helicopter to search the stricken vessel. He saw the discarded coffee cup and the newspapers and found knives strewn on the floor. Quote, "My biggest fear was being attacked by somebody who did not want me on the boat. I was 160 kilometers out to sea with no backup. I didn't know if someone was going to burst through a cupboard and go at me with a knife. I saw all the knives on the ground, but no blood, and thought, what the?" End quote. Search and rescue efforts began on April 18th, with boats and Navy aircraft with infrared capability looking in the vicinity of the locations identified in the video and data from the GPS system. At the same time, Bowen Voluntary Marine Rescue launched a coastal and inland search. The next day, a full-scale search and rescue effort was launched involving volunteer rescue units from several towns as well as Townsville's Coastal Guard, 2 rescue helicopters, 9 airplanes, and 2 commercial vessels. Dr. Paul Lucken, a survival time expert, was consulted. He concluded that it was unlikely that the men were still alive if they were still in the water, and they had probably gone overboard 3 to 4 days earlier. The team still had hope that the men could have reached land and continued searching until 4 p.m. on April 21st, when the air and sea search was called off. Another coastline search was launched on Monday, April 23rd, after some new information had come in, but the search proved fruitless and was called off on the 25th of April. On Friday, April 20th, KAZ II was towed into the Townsville port for forensic examination. On the next day, Sergeant Bardell and Sergeant Malloy of the Queensland Police searched the ship for several signs of foul play. No evidence for this was found, and they discovered that the cabin was neat and tidy, apart from some magazines, a piece of newspaper, a wine cask which was lying on the floor. It was later determined that these items ended up on the floor while the ship was being towed to shore. In the sink were a few butter knives, and on the bench in the gallery a plastic sheath, a fishing knife, was found. They did not appear to have been used recently. Under Desbatten's bed, in a sealed container, the investigators found firearms and some ammunition, none of which was used. In a drawer they found an additional single bullet of the same caliber. After analyzing data from the catamaran's GPS system, police deduced that it had been steered into a northeast direction, into an area where rough seas were building on the day of departure. Later in the afternoon, the GPS data showed it to be adrift. The investigators also recovered a video recording filmed by James Tunstead on April 15th at 10:05 a.m. shortly before the men disappeared, showing that Des Batten was at the helm with the vessel under sail. The sea was choppy and none of the men were wearing life jackets. Peter Tunstead was sitting on the aft stairway of the boat fishing. A long white rope can be seen trailing behind the boat. The film showed the coastline in the area, and this helped investigators pinpoint the exact location of the ship. It was in the area between Gumbrel Island, Grassy Island, and Armit Island. Between August 4th and 7th of 2008, an inquest into the men's disappearance began in the Townsville Coroner's Court, led by Queensland State Coroner Michael Barnes. In total, 27 witnesses were called to testify, and 107 pieces of evidence were submitted. Jennifer Batten testified that her husband Des was an experienced and careful yachtsman, had been around boats for 25 years, and that he was acutely aware of the need for safety. He had earned his recreational skipper's ticket and a qualification in marine radio. Every summer they traveled together to Rottnest Island on various motorboats, although KAZ II was their first sailboat. After they bought it, the couple took 6-week sailing courses and then sailed KAZ II around the Whitsundays twice. Apart from a minor problem with the propeller, the trips were without issues. Batten's wife also stated that the original plan was to sail KAZ II to Fremantle as a couple, but that Batten was worried that just 2 people aboard might not be safe. He decided to take his neighbor's brother, Peter and James Tunstead, with him instead. The trip was planned over several months and discussed daily as they plotted routes with the help of the computer. Quote, they allowed themselves 6 to 8 weeks to get back to Fremantle, but because Des and Peter were retired, it didn't really matter how long they took. They didn't want to sail at night safely. End quote. Also heard was Graeme Douglas, the previous owner of the KAZ II, who had sold the boat to Batten. He stated the boat was in good condition when it was sold, and that he met the men the night before they set sail. He also helped the men plan part of their route and was surprised to see that, according to police, the men had deviated from their planned route that was pre-programmed in their GPS system. Gavin Howland, the skipper of the commercial fishing vessel called the Gillian, testified on the 16th of April 2007 while fishing on the reef off Bowen. He and his crew saw a white yacht with a torn sail drifting sideways between the reefs through the narrow passage at about 3 kilometers in the north-northeastern direction along with the current. He came within 50 meters of the boat but was unable to spot anyone on board. This was 2 days before the Coast Guard spotted KAZ II adrift off the coast of Townsville, and the day after authorities believed the men went missing. Howland found it odd that the sailboat was in the area noted for its shallow water and rocks. He did not attempt to contact the boat or the authorities. Howland told the inquest that it did not occur to him that the crew of the yacht might be in distress, and went on to say, quote, it did seem a bit strange to me, but I have this rule that no one goes near another vessel, end quote. Sergeant Paul Malloy, one of the 3 forensic police officers who examined KAZ II after she was towed back to shore on April 2007, told the inquest that he did not believe the men had met with foul play. He spent several hours combing the ship for signs of a struggle, but found no evidence that anyone besides the 3-man crew had been aboard. Quote, we came to the conclusion that the boat itself was not a crime scene, end quote, he told the inquest. After questions by Peter Tunstead's widow, Frances, as to why the police did not check the fingerprints, Sergeant Malloy said his years of experience told him it was not necessary. Quote, we were there for a long time. We pulled the boat apart and found nothing untoward. If there was any indication of foul play, we would have taken every measure we could to examine that boat, end quote. State Coroner Barnes admits in his official report that he, quote, cannot be definitive about the circumstances under which the deaths occurred, end quote. However, based on the eyewitness accounts, the video found on board, and the state of the yacht in which it was found, the report proposed the following scenario. On Sunday, April 15, 2007 at 10:05 a.m., the KAZ II was sailing in the vicinity of George Point. Up to that moment, everything was going as planned, but in the following hour their situation changed dramatically. The men hauled in the white rope that was trailing behind the boat and bundled it up on the foredeck, possibly to dry, next to the locker it was normally kept in. For unknown reasons, James Tunstead then took off his t-shirt and glasses and placed them on the back seat. The report says that since the men's fishing lure was found entangled in the ship's port side rudder, an obvious explanation would be that one of them tried to free the lure and fell overboard while doing so. Standing on the boat's sugar scoops platform, a platform at the back of the ship close to the waterline, while the boat is moving is perilous, and falling in the water is easy, but getting back aboard is almost impossible. One of the other men then came to the rescue of his brother, while Batten, still on board, started the motor and realized he had to drop the sails before he could go back for his friends. As he left the helm to drop the sails, a deviation of the ship's course or wind direction could have easily caused a jib swinging of the boom across the deck and knocking Batten overboard. This could even have happened before Batten was able to untie and throw out the life ring to his friends. A blue coffee mug found near the life ring may support this, since the boat was traveling before the wind at a speed of 15 kilometers to 28 kilometers an hour. It would be out of the reach of the men within seconds, the report states. Quote, "From that point, the end would have been swift. None of them were good swimmers. The seas were choppy. The men would have quickly become exhausted and sunk beneath the waves." The report ruled out foul play and staged disappearance. Other explanations for the disappearance of the KAZ II crew were weather. According to the authorities in Townsville, the weather had been windy and the sea had been rough between the time the KAZ II departed and was found drifting. This led authorities to speculate that the crew may have experienced some form of sudden difficulty during rough weather and gone overboard. However, one issue with this theory is that the contents of the cabin, including a table, did not seem to have been disrupted in any way. Relatives of the missing men say the boat's condition makes this unlikely and point to the discrepancies such as the fact that the men's fishing lines and laundry were set out and that their life jackets were still stowed, which indicated that they were not experiencing rough weather at the time of their disappearance. Also noted was the fact that KAZ II was found with its fenders out, leading to speculate that the boat may have docked with another as yet unknown vessel to which the crew might have unwillingly or willingly transferred. Hope Hemming, niece of boat owner Des Batten, quote, "The fenders were out on their yacht, and the only reason they ever put them out is when another boat comes aside if you come to rest against a wharf," end quote. But Townsville police said that the small craft commonly leave their fenders out at all times, making it impossible to draw any definitive conclusions. Volunteer radio operator Ivan Ormez recorded that KAZ II radioed in at 6:45 p.m. on April 15th, giving its position as George Point. This is the last known contact with KAZ II. It should have taken them a short time to reach George Point, and that it's unclear what took them so long to arrive there. One explanation is that they were just fishing the whole day, but another explanation is that they had problems with the GPS, since they already tried to set off on April 14th, but were forced to return because of the non-functional GPS. That incident was because of a user error, and it was easily fixed, so KAZ II set off early the next day. Perhaps the catamaran became stuck on the sandbar near George Point, where the boat's last radio message was made. When the men jumped overboard to push it free, a gust of wind blew and the boat drifted away, leaving them stranded. This would explain why towels were left out on the deck. One crew member may have been washed over by a freak wave, and that the others were lost trying to rescue him. But why the shredded sail? There were suggestions that the men staged their own disappearance for insurance purposes. One of the wilder theories was that some kind of paranormal event had happened aboard their catamaran, or it had been attacked by a whale or giant squid. Were they abducted by extraterrestrials?